Welcome to Jesus with Josie. So today I'm going to be sharing a short version of my identity crisis and just sexual confusion. So I want to let you guys know that God has a plan for your life. The enemy also has a plan for your life. So very quickly I'm going to show you how the enemy tried to change God's plan for me. So very early on in life, as a child, I was introduced to masturbation. And I quickly became addicted to it, which opened doors to the spiritual realm and the demonic. We're not fighting just flesh and blood. The things that we see in the physical part of our lives have first happened spiritually. So just know there is warfare going on for your life. The enemy's out to steal, kill, and destroy. So I learned that very early on. And also another contributor was, I love my dad. He was a great provider. He worked 2 jobs, but he wasn't around. And he was my disciplinarian. So without having that bond and relationship with him, it gave me the same outlook towards God, that God was just a distant God, that he was waiting to punish me, but was not a relational God. And sometimes when we have an absent parent, whether physically or whether emotionally, that can really change just how we see ourselves, how we respect ourselves, and the decisions that we make in life. And then around 12 years old, a family friend of ours who was an older guy, I was just craving attention from an older man to kind of have that bond that I never experienced. And lo and behold, this man gave it to me. He loved me. He adored me. He spent time with me and really showed me that he cared, but it was all because he wanted to molest me and sexually assault and harass me. And he did that for years and years and years. So that completely crushed me. Sexual trauma really did a number on me and it basically changed the way that I viewed myself and dating. And then as I began dating and realizing that these teenage guys, they were mainly out for sex, and that's what they wanted me for. So I saw myself as like a sexual object because that's what they made me feel. And then after that, I began just drinking alcohol very heavily as a teenager, and that would go on for years and years and years. So between the masturbation, the fornication, just being a sexual object, being sexually assaulted, and then I started experimenting with other girls in high school because it was kind of like a cool thing to do. There's all these open doors that were happening that just changed the trajectory of my life and the plan that God had for me. Because like I said, God has a plan and the enemy has a plan. So now I'm no longer sure of who I am. I'm starting to get more and more confused. And I made vows to myself that no man would ever hurt me again after being hurt and used and abused by guys. I made that vow. And when we make vows, we build up walls. And we don't understand that there's a spiritual implication as well as a physical. So physically, it looked like I could no longer have an intimate relationship with men. I had put up so many walls and I had so many thoughts towards them based off my experience that I couldn't let any man in. So because of that, and because I had a desire to have a close, intimate relationship, I started dating women, even though there was a lot of confusion around it. There was a confusion about, why was I born this way? I started to think I was born that way. Why am I different? Why can't I be normal? And I would do a lot of research, like, why am I like this? Was I born this way? Is there a gene? Is it in my DNA? Is it in my blood? And I could never find anything that would give me peace. But after being in the LGBTQ community for probably a decade or more, I found that there were a lot of common occurrences and things that we all had in common, such as, not everyone, but a lot of people, had been sexually assaulted, just horrible experiences with men, either an absent parent, molested by either a man or a woman, just so many different things, or just taking on more boyish traits, and just how society looks at that. And whatever the case is, it just caused some confusion. And I know now that God is not the author of confusion. The enemy comes to steal, He wants to steal our identity. He wants to steal our plan that God has for us. He wants to steal our purpose. One of the ways he does that is by confusing us with our identity. And so he had me. I was so confused. I didn't know if I wanted to be a man or a woman. I didn't understand my life anymore. I knew that as a child, I just knew that God was going to use me and that I wanted to do something great for God. And as I looked at my life, I just lived it so selfishly. I lived it for myself. Because I had so much hatred towards myself, and just disrespect towards myself. I didn't respect myself, so I didn't respect others. I just saw people as a game, especially men. They were just a game. They were just a species to conquer, to play with their hearts, to stomp on them the way they had done me. And that's how I lived. So after years of living in LGBTQ community and having same-sex relationships, if you want to go watch my first original testimony of how I met Jesus in jail, what happened was I got a DUI and I met Jesus in jail and I completely gave my life to him. And I asked him to show me how to live here. And part of him showing me that was he gave me a really great mentor. Thanks, Kimberly. One of her suggestions was that I take a year off from dating. Just let God heal me. Let God show me who he called me to be. Let him get into those areas and start healing that rejection, the sexual trauma, the wounds, just all the damage that had been done to me, all the damage I had done to myself. And let him tell you who you are. Rediscover who he's called you to be. And thank God he did just that. It was just the most beautiful relationship I've ever had with God. And but that part of me, the same-sex attracted part, I never really dealt with. I didn't talk about. And he gave me a dream one night of a woman who was dancing in a ring of fire. And she was calling me over to her. And I had knowledge in my dream that she was not from God, that she was from the enemy. And in the dream, I started saying, no, I know who you're from. I don't want you. And so when I woke up, I was like, whoa, oh, I hope I never experienced that. A couple of weeks later, I did. And I met that woman and I got into this relationship with her. So in the flesh, I was extremely happy to have this closeness, to have this relationship. But in the spirit, my relationship with God just died. It disappeared. So I was mourning the loss of that relationship because I basically just chose my flesh over God. And after about 6 months of this, I remember being at church one night and the presence of God was just so thick and tangible. And I was crying and I called out to God and I said, God, if this is not the relationship you have for me, please make that woman leave me. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, I went home from work. She was sitting at the table with the Bible open. She turned around and looked at me and said, we're not supposed to be doing this. So that started the process of us ending that relationship. I rededicated my life to God, and that beautiful relationship opened up again. I could hear him clearly. I had that closeness with him. And I just decided, I said, God, I give you my life. I'll spend the rest of my life alone with you. I was wearing a wedding ring. I didn't want anyone to ask me to lunch. I'm just like, people, just leave me alone. I just want to be with God forever and do his plan and purpose. And months into this, I shared with God, I was like, God, if you did send me a husband, I would want him to be someone my size so that I could feel comfortable. So I want to say about 6 months later, he moved my husband next door to me and we weighed exactly the same. We're the same size shoe. We're the same size clothes. He was a Christian man. He was looking for a church. And the first night I hung out with him, he told me, any woman that I date is going to have to understand that I'm going to do this God's way and I'm not having sex until marriage. And that immediately put me at ease after all the trauma I'd been through with men. So God just fully restored and redeemed the whole situation. 3 months later, we got married. We've been married for almost 9 years now. And I still had to fight a lot of those desires in the beginning, those first couple of years. But God is so faithful, and I knew that. I know he's faithful because I've been walking with him now for like 12 years, and whatever he says is true. Whatever he says he's going to do, he will do it. So even though I struggled those first couple of years and fighting off old desires, I knew that I made a covenant. Marriage was a covenant that I made with God. So even if I didn't want to commit fully to my husband, I was committed to God. So because of that, God brought me through. He just continued to heal me, and I needed that to continue that healing process. So I can tell you today that I no longer struggle with any of those things that I went through in my past, any of those desires. It's dead. It's gone. Like, I am a new creation in Christ. God has restored me back to who He originally designed and called me to be. And that doesn't just include sexuality. That includes so many different things. It just so happens that this is the portion of the redemption that I am talking about today. But He is faithful. He is true. For any of you who may be confused about any part of your identity, like I said, not just sexuality, if you have a question, if you want to reach out, my email is below. But I just wanted to share this. There's nothing too hard for God. And no matter how many years we lived away from Him, He can redeem it. There's no lost time when it comes to God. So I just wanted to share this with any of you who maybe you can relate. Maybe you needed this. Maybe you know someone who's confused and you can just see that struggle in them. But just want to let you know that God is good and He will do what He says that He will do. You guys call out to Him today. I pray that you are blessed by this. This is Jesus with Josey.